PC flipping has always looked like the American dream. I've watched the ZTT videos and the Elijah's Lab videos. I've seen the thousands of dollars in profit, and I've seen only one guy in the UK who tried it and he gave up after one single video. So as a first year engineering student and an enthusiast in the UK, I wanted to see, was it actually possible, or if people just weren't trying hard enough. This is P-Spec. I'm Pierre, and this is my journey to £800 in 8 weeks. So, my first try was a simple build. It was a 2060 Super and a 5600X build. This build was ridden with issues, but only small ones. I overpaid for the GPU, so slim margins. But overall, the build was incredibly boring. I made a tiny bit of profit, and all it did was prove the concept worked, which was most important. This is also, however, where I made my first mistake, which was where I bought in bulk with no need nor customers to sell these components to. But this would only rear its head later. Not long later though, since speaking of, my second build. So as I said before, I was too enthusiastic at the start, and I bought two 2060s, each at £155, which, as you might know if you check on eBay, is overpriced. So not a good deal, and the same mistake. However, unlike last time, I couldn't sell it. I was struggling. So I found a good 3060 Ti on Gumtree, the white gigabyte models with purple, and I eventually sold it after a few weeks. Not the greatest build, but this was one of the first glimpses into why I should only sell in one spot. Difficult logistics. So my next build was a custom build. After only building two PCs, I landed a massive boon to my confidence, but not my cortisol levels. It was a fun one. I had to sound like a system integrator, but beneath the conversations with this client, I was frantically installing and signing up for PayPal, learning how to make invoices. But it worked. I managed to build a fully custom build for a local Welsh voice actor who worked on Black Myth Wukong. I built him a pretty nice 9600X, 32 gigs of RAM and 5070 build for about £1,200 total, where I charged a £150 fee. This was before all the RAM issues came up, hence the price, and then only one build later, I would go from on top of the world to killing a motherboard and nearly killing the GPU alongside it. This was an interesting one. It was a 6750 XT build. I got it from a donor, a Lian Li Dan A3 case. It was missing its side panel, so I got it for a very nice price, and it had massive potential. However, I killed the motherboard. How did I do this? I believe it's because when I fit the IO shield, it didn't fully seat. So I forced the motherboard in, and I killed it that way. And then next, the GPU fell out of the slot when it was running. So I performed the live lobotomy on my GPU. This was because I forgot to tighten it properly, and it simply fell out. And that gave me a heart attack, but there was no GPU damage at all. It was just incredibly scary. And I suspect overall the case tolerances were the main issue here, as I usually don't have issues with IO shields. So I still made a fine recovery, however, I made some money, so I'm happy with that. And the next build is an even more interesting story. So this build uses an older Intel CPU. It was a 9700K build, and for this build I tried a trade-in. But the reality of a trade-in is that to make decent profit, you have to lowball people into the ground. And I just couldn't bring myself to be ruthless enough to do that. Because believe it or not, I have a heart. Which means my margins took a hit before I even started the build. Worst of all, the trade was an ITX build. And if I'm being honest, it's still sitting in storage to this day. And I cannot for the life of me get the 1060 out of it to sell it. And then came the hardware I chose for this build. This was another transplant build, and the case I chose to transplant into was a Foyfkin F1 case. This was an Amazon special, and it was advertised as an ATX case. It looked nice. It came with 6 fans, actually 7 fans with one exhaust, but it was essentially a normal M86 chassis that the manufacturer drilled ATX standoffs into, which made it incredibly tight for the power and reset pins on the bottom, as they were squished in between the motherboard and the fans. So I needed to figure out a solution with electrical tape to keep it into place, otherwise it would shake itself off in transport and I'd get an angry customer. So no more trade-ins and no more Foyfkin cases. You'd think I could listen to myself, but my next build was also in a Foyfkin case, so that was my true last. This was a 3070 build, so I found a 3070 at about £170. Big potential, and I bought a CPU from eBay, a 3600. So I bought this, but it came bent. It was too bent to bend back into place, so I needed to find a solution. So I saw a 2700X on sale at CEX, not too far away. But on my drive there, they said that they didn't have it in store through an email. So I had no choice left and only less than 24 hours. So I needed to get a 4500 from Curry's last minute at 10 AM. So 3 hours before the sale. I had to put that in the build, and then I sold it, fortunately, but it took away the chance to use a proper tower cooler instead of just the default one. Not my proudest moment, but considering what happened, I had lost 2 CPUs within 24 hours, I'm quite happy with it. So after dealing with bent eBay pins and doing last minute sprints to CEX just to get a system to post, I realized that relying on random hardware deals is a massive gamble. To actually scale in the UK, you can't just rely on luck. You need a formula, or a meta, as I would say. And that is exactly what I found with this next build. A 2080 and Ryzen 3000 combo. This was my first 2080 build. This is where I found the meta of 20 series with Ryzen 3000s. And it's where I got my first good profit margin. And nothing of note actually happened on this build, which is a good thing, because the best builds are boring ones. If you're doing live surgery on a motherboard, or holding power connectors onto the motherboard with electrical tape, your business model is not sustainable. The meta works because it's predictable and easy. This was a calm, good year for the end of 2025, but it was disappointing in my opinion. It could have been far better. I had totally underestimated the Christmas rush, as I had assumed because I was a beginner, not many people want to buy from me. But people buy based on looks and specs, not if you're a beginner or not. So even though I only sold about 5 builds, in that month I had 25 inquiries in 20 days. So that's a lot of revenue lost, about £10,000 at best. But I realised this was for me. I wanted more. I liked the pace of Christmas, and I'd be happy with that all year round. So my total profit was £870 in 8 weeks. I was very happy with the performance, especially for a proof of concept, but where do we go from here? So my short-term goal is a high-end sim rig. Something with the Conspit Aries Platinum and maybe Conspit CPP pedals, because I'm more of a historic car enjoyer, so I prefer higher torque. For medium-term goals, I would like a warehouse, a 100 meter squared warehouse. This I would get if I can prove I can sell 1 PC per week nationally, which is coming soon. But for now, this is just a medium-term goal. It's an ambitious size, but I have the blueprint to make it work, I believe. Long-term goals, it's cars. There's 2 cars I would like, it depends which. My main is an 840 Ci, an E31. It's a beautiful car, but it's incredibly expensive to maintain, so it might not be good for the business. Another car is an Evo 4. A little cheaper perhaps to import, but it does have something called crank walk where the engine eventually eats itself alive. So not very smart either way. But for now, that is all for today's video. Next time I'll be breaking down why you cannot follow American flipping strategies in the UK, and I'll be giving you my own tips and tricks to make a budget PC in the 2026 Ramageddon. Welcome to P-Spec. The first weeks are done, but the journey has only started. Remember, aesthetics are standard, and value is paramount. See you in the next one.